It is Open Line Night with the Beacon Center, Tennessee. I have Stephanie Whitt here, the Executive Vice President. We've been talking about a lot your research into the state's assistance programs.
Yes.
We've talked a lot about that. I want to move on to other things that you all are doing, because you always stay busy and try to keep really your finger on what's going on across the state and the needs across the state. You've looked hard at rural Tennessee and what's happening.
Yes. So in 2 weeks, we'll be releasing another research report talking about our rural areas in Tennessee, what opportunities there are to improve and drive the economy up in those areas, because a lot of times there's a huge focus on what happens in some of our metropolitan or urban areas, and sometimes they don't get as much attention in the rural areas. So we're going to be looking at what are some opportunities and things that we can do as a state to really help the economy in that area.
Give me a snapshot of what you found across Tennessee as you all have looked really at these areas.
Yeah, so we have realized that a lot of people that grow up in some of the rural areas, they end up moving away for school, and then we want to know, how can we get them to go back to their communities and start their families there? And you really have to do that by creating an environment that is innovative and young families want to move to and migrate to. And so we're looking at what are those different solutions that are out there. What are the barriers? You know, is it rural broadband? Are there issues with telecommunications and different services available for people that they're looking for, and how can we assess that across the state? And
it's really having a trickle-down effect. You know, we've, as a station, we've taken a hard look at the healthcare situation in rural Tennessee, the hospital closings. Not only do you have a lot of jobs that have been lost that way, but people are dying because they can't get to a hospital when they need to.
Yes, and what other services, and we really have to look at the model of healthcare in Tennessee and say, what, you know, just because we've always done it this way in the past doesn't mean we have to do it this way in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys have also looked at some different things that you're going to be bringing up during the legislative session, the next one that comes up. Some exciting things, I think, and just always trying to forward the workforce in this state and make it easier to be a productive working citizen.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we've done is we've looked at occupational licensing a lot in our policy research, and Arizona, interestingly enough, just passed legislation this past year that allows for people who have an occupational license, so anybody that has to have a license to do a job. And what they passed was, okay, if you move to Arizona and you've had this license in another state and you've had it and you're in good standing for at least a year, then when you move there you get reciprocity. You don't have to go and get more training. You actually can just come right into their system. And so we're looking at doing something similar in Tennessee, and we want to put out that policy idea for folks to look at.
And the idea is you will welcome more people to Tennessee, and then the state benefits financially from that.
And we're a huge in-migration state, so we have so many people that move here. We touch so many different states, and making it easier for people to move here and then work is a positive thing.
Yeah, absolutely. You're also looking at a property tax cap, and that kind of perked me up, because I was sitting here on Monday talking with a Metro Council member who said, we have got to increase property taxes big time here in Davidson County.
So we're doing research on property taxes because we've been getting a lot of phone calls in the over the summer as different county commissions and city councils have met. There have been a lot of proposed property tax increases across the state, even though we're in this kind of good economy and people, you know, you'd think that revenues are increasing, so that people are questioning why they need a property tax raise. And a lot of times people don't know that there's been a vote and that their property taxes are raised until they get that first bill in the mail. And that's when they call us and say, what's happening?
Going on?
Why is this happening? And we've done such a great job at the state level of cutting taxes and putting more money back in the pockets of Tennesseans that it doesn't make sense if it's just taken back up at the local level.
So what is the proposal that you're going to push for?
So we're just looking at different policy solutions at what other states are doing right now, but we're one of only 4 states that does not have some type of cap in how much you can increase property taxes year over year. So we're not saying that they can't increase them at all. It's just saying that if you're going to, it can only be a certain percentage, and if you go above that, then you really should ask the voters through a referendum whether or not they want to approve it.
And I just want to dig into this a little bit more, because I've been hearing and asking a lot of questions of Metro Council members the past couple of weeks about our budget just here in Davidson County. which is not in good shape. And yet, no matter where you go, people look around and say, we have all these cranes and we have all these high rises going up.
Right.
How can we be in this situation where a council member comes in here and says, we have no other choice, but we have got to raise property taxes, not just this year, but probably the next couple of years?
Well, it's raising a lot of red flags for voters, and as you saw in the last mayoral election, I think that's been something that's been definitely raised. We did some exit polling during that mayoral race, and fiscal responsibility was the #1 issue that voters said they voted on. So we are starting to see voters say, wait a minute, Nashville's growing like crazy. Do we really need to raise taxes, or are we just have a spending problem? And so they really need to take a look at how they're spending their money going forward, and reassess that. And
in the past couple of administrations, I'm almost certain, but correct me if I'm wrong, that the Beacon Center has raised some red flags about.
We have.
Why are you doing this deal?
Yes.
What kind of deals have you guys said not so fast on?
So we've typically, on corporate welfare, we've been pretty strong in saying that offering incentives to one company and not to others has been problematic. It doesn't work economically, and we know that Nashville is already a city that people want to move to. So when are we going to draw the line and kind of stop paying people to come and relocate here? Because they're already going to come anyway, and we need to make sure that we're taking care of our communities first and funding the resources like schools and firemen, police, so that we can actually fund those essential services before we start handing out millions of dollars and picking really winners and losers between corporations.
I think that's a good way of putting it. I don't think anybody has ever said that before, but it is, really, they are picking the winners and losers. What kind of property tax cap are you looking at? Is it more just that you can't do it more from, some
We're
years,
looking at
or
the revenue year over year. So we haven't decided on what that specific policy should be yet, but we're looking at what other states have done and what's a reasonable amount with inflation, new growth, those types of things to look at.
I think it's good for people at home who are not used to being up on Capitol Hill to understand how the legislative process works. And I've talked to you all many times before, and you've said, we've been at this initiative for several sessions before we saw that needle move, right?
Yes.
That's usually how it works.
Absolutely. It takes a lot of time and research, and we like to provide that intellectual ammunition to lawmakers to say, this is what we've been working on, this is the research we've done, this is what other states have done, how can we be more successful as a state? And so we're looking forward to that coming in January, and we have a sister organization that's called Beacon Impact, and that's how we use that arm to advocate at the legislature. And so we will take our research and kind
give it to them and
then
go.
and then work through that process through Beacon Impact.
And I would hope too, circling back to the assistance program that has this pot of cash there, that lawmakers on the Hill will start talking about it and talking together and saying, I always get these calls into my office saying, we need help, we need more money, and really start saying, we have this money.
Absolutely.
How are we going to use it?
Absolutely. And what is a fiscally conservative way to look at the program and figure out what the best way to use the money going forward is?
Let's talk to Anita. She's on the line. Anita, thank you for being with us tonight. What's your question or comment?
Yes. Are you speaking with me?
Yes, ma'am, I am. Go ahead.
Yes. My question is, how are we paying people to come here? How does that work? Are we paying businesses to move here? And why?
Okay, thank you, Nia. I'm going to hang up on you so you can listen to the TV. It's a little bit easier that way. And I think she's going back to how we were talking about enticing companies to come.
Yes. Yeah, so it's not paying individuals to come here, it's paying corporations. So we're giving out tax credits and tax incentives for, I'm sure you've heard things like Amazon and other companies to move to Nashville or to move to different areas of the state. And we have really always said that instead of picking certain companies to give tax breaks to or incentives to, why not just cut the corporate tax rate across the board, and all companies can benefit from that, and that would drive more economic growth and jobs in the state.
Because if you're not familiar, usually when there's a big company who's looking to move or set up a new headquarters, they're looking at a couple of different cities, and they go to these cities and say, what do you have to offer us? And cities will put together a bid and say, this is why you should move to our city. And as part of that, at least in the past and in the recent past, Nashville has offered these tax incentives. Say, well, we'll cut your tax rate, or you don't have to pay these taxes for so many years, and those sorts of things. And then you kind of cross your fingers and hope they pick us. And a lot of businesses have.
Yes. And one of those things that we did last year through Beacon Impact was put actually accountability measures into those mega deals to say it was in practice, but it wasn't in statute or in the law that they had to do these accountability agreements. And if we've learned
like
anything
what?
From like Hemlock or Semiconductor, when they got millions of dollars in taxpayer money and then didn't end up opening. And so that was one of those, they didn't have to pay back the funds.
Wow.
So in these accountability agreements, if you promise that you're going to provide or create a certain number of jobs, then if you don't meet those benchmarks, you have to return the cash back to the state.
I mean, it kind of seems like a no duh. Like it should have been there at the beginning, right?
It should have been there to begin with, but we were really glad to work with the administration and put that into law.
To going forward. Have you had a chance to sit down with this administration here in Davidson County yet? I mean, it's very new.
Yes, absolutely. We haven't sat down with Mayor Cooper yet, but we have been really following things going forward, and we anticipate that we'll have continued conversations. We talked to him a lot when he was on the council, and so we know that we will continue that conversation going forward. And really, it's a new time for Nashville to take a look at our finances, and we have more debt in Nashville-Davidson County government than the entire state has.
Say that again?
There's more debt per capita that the city owes than the entire state.
That is really something to chew on right there.
Yes.
It really is. And I think that's why we had Bob Mendez in here last week who said we have to do something. We don't have the option not to do something at this point.
Right.
Somebody has to say, I'm going to tackle this. And right now it's sitting in Mayor Cooper's lap, so we will see what happens. We're going to take one more quick break. We're going to come back and wrap things up next. Stay with us.